Jim Blair. I came to Connertucky in 1967. Had been here in Indiana 5 years prior to that. I grew up on a place called Upper Blair Branch, in the heart of the Promised Land in Letcher County, Kentucky. We were so far behind that the 1937 flood didn't come in until 1940. We had running water, but you had to run out and get it. I grew up sitting around listening to older people tell tales. They were short, to the point, humorous. And Bill Blair was an absolute scholar when it came to telling tales. He and these guys got to bragging on their milk cows. And Bill all of a sudden got very serious, and he said, "Boys, the best cow I ever had never had a calf." And he thought a minute, he said, "And her mother never either." Now, what to tell you about Bill, he carried an old spyglass that he could run out that way. And he'd study bees. And he'd get that thing out and he'd study the flight pattern of the bees. And he'd go up on the side of the mountain and start looking until he found that bee tree. Well, he located one over on the Spring Branch side of the mountain on Uncle Jim Adams's land. And he and my brother Bruce left shortly after daybreak. They got all their plunder together to head over there. They got him a double bit axe, a crosscut saw. They got a smoker, plenty of denim to burn to get the smoke. And they had a bucket or two for carrying the honey. And they went up the mountain to that low gap and dropped down on the Spring Branch side of the mountain and around there to that bee tree. Well, Uncle Jim had an old mule there. It looked more like a pair of quilting frames than a mule. Very poor. And that old mule was picking there, a little penrile. There was no grass there on the side of the mountain. And that old mule got interested. They were going to cut that bee tree. He got curious what was going on. Well, they decided that since the tree was of no value, they'd just follow it right down the side of the mountain and just get the honey. So they cut a notch down here and then just sawed over to that. And when it split and cracked, every bee in that tree went over on that old mule. Starts stinging that old mule. That old mule would kick its feet as high as it could and started passing gas and headed down the side of that mountain, heading for Uncle Jim's barn. Bill just collapsed. He thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever seen in his life. And then the bees got down under his pants and started stinging him. He'd grab himself, he'd go, If streaking hadn't already been invented, Bill started streaking right there on the side of that mountain because first thing he did was try to get those pants off from him. He went home and said his wife took one look at him and said she won't know me for a week. I think one more, I better tell you what it was like to take a cow to the bull down there in the mountains of Kentucky. We just kept one milk cow in most families. And there were very few bulls around anywhere. And each one of us kids, there were 7 of us boys, and each one of us had to take our turn taking a cow to the bull. Well, it came my turn, and Pop decided that the only purebred bull was down there at Hobart Ison's, which is down by the Jeremiah post office, about a mile and a half from our home. And it was my turn. If you ever notice, they'd always get on the cut up on a Sunday when everybody was home from work. So I went down to the corn crib and I got me a plow line. And I put that through that halter of on that old cow. Headed out of there, me, a big overgrown boy with a bad hormone imbalance anyways. Looking right down at my feet. Didn't want anybody to see me. Headed down that holler, dreading when I got to Uncle Melvin's. Because I knew that Uncle Melvin would be sitting out there on the porch, and Aunt Pearl would be sitting right there beside him. Well, he started yelling at me long before I got down there. "Where are you going?" Him knowing where I was going, leading that cow. Melvin got to take his cow to the bull. Is she on the cut up? You know, knowing she's on the cut up, or I wouldn't be taking her to the bull. Well, I got on past there, things went well till I got to the mouth of the holler, and there was a bridge there over Rockhouse Creek. It had 2 by 6s on it and spaces in between the 2 by 6s. And that old cow would not cross that bridge. I got down on all fours and I'd paw and bellow like a bull trying to get that cow to come across that bridge, but no such luck. I had to split that creek with that cow. Things went well till we got a half-mile down Highway 7, there about the mouth of Doty, close to where Uncle Walbert lived. All of a sudden, I spotted that there was a bull, a scrubby-looking bull in a pasture there. The first thought that went through my mind was, if that old scrubby bull gets this cow, Papa kill me. So that old bull started running up and down by that fence, which didn't look too good anyway, a pawing, a bellowing, a snorting, and its nose holes turning wrong side out. And I'd keep thinking, what if that bull gets to that cow? Bob will kill me for sure. And I just knew that bull was going to jump that fence. Sure enough, it did. And I thought, what in the world am I going to do? And as that bull started to jump that cow, I took my straw hat off and held it up there. I didn't know what else to do. It tore my straw hat all to pieces. Now you want me to tell any more?
Tell as much or little as you want. We can tell one more and then we'll...
Okay, now, one of the stories that are popular around there was paint tales or booger tales, they call them. Evil spirits or whatever you might call them. And my brother Paulie has seen and heard more things than anybody I ever saw in my life. That he was standing there in the road, right down just below where my cousin Marie has her home today, and he could hear something in the branch. The water was up just a little bit. He said he got to looking, and he said it was a skeleton of a dog. And it would go up through that branch, and then ever so often it would stop and shake the water off from it. Now, me personally, I would avoid that place, although I don't believe a word of it, but I would still avoid that place. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.